You know, I think we all generally know the drill for like a small kitchen fire.
Right, yeah, you grab the baking soda or something, right?
Exactly. Or maybe you throw a damp cowl over the pan, you just smother it. It's practical, it's immediate, and, well, it makes sense.
Because it's just a simple tactical response to a contained, manageable problem.
But what happens when the entire house is engulfed in flames? Suddenly, that box of baking soda is, I mean, it's completely useless.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't need a kitchen hack anymore. You need an entirely different paradigm of survival. So today we are taking a deep dive into Dr. David R. Hawkins' letting go process to, frankly, shatter a pretty massive misconception.
And it is a huge misconception.
It really is. Our mission today is to prove to you that this concept of, surrender is not just some quick, trendy nervous system hack to use when you get cut off in traffic.
Right, like a quick fix for a bad mood.
Exactly. Instead, we're going to reveal how this deceptively simple mechanism is actually, well, a profound spiritual process. It's a literal lifeline designed to help you navigate and ultimately transform the most devastating major crises of your life.
It really is a complete paradigm shift, honestly. Because it takes something that sounds almost passive-like, just letting a feeling go, and reveals it to be the most active, courageous thing a human being can actually do.
Okay, let's unpack this because I feel like we need to clarify what we actually mean by letting go before we can, apply it to a massive crisis.
Good idea. The basics are important.
Right. The core instruction in the sources seems almost too simple. It's just be aware of a feeling, let it come up, and stay with it without trying to change it. But how do you actually do that in real life? What does it physically mean to just stay with a feeling so that it leads to what sages call like the kingdom of heaven within?
Yeah, that is the critical distinction we have to make right up front because it's not about analyzing your feelings at all.
So no overthinking.
Zero overthinking. To actually let go, you have to drop the mental narrative completely. I mean, it means shifting your attention away from the thoughts in your head and focusing entirely on the physical sensation in your body.
Like the actual biological feeling.
Yes, exactly. When you're angry, maybe there's like a burning tightness in your chest. Or when you're terrified, maybe it's a cold knot in your stomach. Letting go is the physical act of just sitting with that raw bodily sensation.
Okay, but you don't judge it.
No, you don't label it. You
Right.
don't judge it. You don't try to push it away, and this is key. You don't try to hold on to it either. You just let the energy run its course until it naturally dissipates.
So it's fundamentally a physiological experience, not a mental debate with yourself.
Completely. It is entirely in the body. But to understand why this simple physiological act leads to such profound spiritual heights, we have to look at what it's trying to achieve on a macro level.
Which goes way beyond just, calming down.
Way beyond. This isn't about fixing a bad mood so you can have a more productive Tuesday. It is fundamentally about dissolving the ego, or what Dr. Hawkins refers to as the small self.
The small self.
Right. This small self is the part of us that is deeply, deeply attached to our negative programs. It's the part of you that secretly loves feeling unworthy or victimized, or the part that is fiercely obsessed with always being right.
Which is such a wild concept to accept that we actually get a weird payoff from our own misery.
I know, but we absolutely do. The ego gets a massive hit of juice from being the victim. It loves the drama, it clings to these limitations like a life raft, but the letting go process, it bypasses the ego entirely.
Oh, because you aren't feeding it with thoughts.
Exactly. Think of the metaphor of the sun and the clouds from the sources. Imagine your higher self, which is your innate capacity for unconditional love, inner peace, boundless joy. Imagine that as the sun.
Okay, the sun is the baseline.
Right. And your negative emotions, your fears, your resentments, those are the clouds blocking it.
It's like we spend our whole lives trying to buy expensive, complicated light bulbs to brighten up a dark room, completely ignoring the fact that there's a giant window right there. It's just covered in mud.
Yes. That's a great way to put it.
Like, we don't need a better light bulb. We just need to wash the window.
And that implies something truly radical, which is that you don't have to build the sun. You don't have to somehow acquire peace or love. They are your innate human factory settings. The kingdom of heaven is already within you.
So letting go just removes the blockage.
Yes, it merely removes the clouds, washing the mud off that window, like you said, so the sun can naturally shine through. It fulfills the core goal of all great spiritual traditions, which is the surrender of the personal will, but it does it as a purely internal mechanical process.
But, I mean, the mind fights this process tooth and nail, doesn't it? We always want to think our way out of our problems.
Oh, constantly. What's fascinating here is how the intellect actively sabotages us. We rely so heavily on our minds to solve emotional problems. But in reality, thoughts are just rationalizations for pent-up emotional energy.
Wait, so the thoughts don't create the feeling?
Nope, it's the other way around. The intellect will generate thousands, literally thousands of thoughts to justify one single suppressed feeling.
So the thoughts are essentially just a smokescreen.
A highly convincing smokescreen, yeah. Think of it like this. The underlying feeling is the bait on a hook, and the thoughts are a school of fish biting at it.
Wow, okay.
If you bite at the thoughts, if you start analyzing why you're mad, who is to blame, what you should have said in that argument, you just get caught in an endless loop of overthinking.
Because you're acting like the fish.
Exactly. But the spiritual truth of who you are is the silent awareness underneath all of those thoughts. To stretch the analogy, the real self isn't the fish, and it isn't the bait, it's the water in the fishbowl.
The water itself, that is powerful.
Right. Letting go is about ignoring the thousands of frantic thoughts and just sitting with that raw, underlying physical feeling until the energy burns out. And that brings you back to the silent water of awareness.
Which, okay, that makes perfect sense when we were talking about everyday annoyances. You get cut off in traffic, you feel the knot of anger in your chest, you sit with it, it passes.
Easy enough, right?
But this brings us to a massive hurdle. Now that we know the ultimate spiritual goal is moving up what Hawkins calls the map of consciousness to reveal our inner sun, what happens when a Category 5 hurricane of emotion hits?
Yeah, the real heavy stuff.
Like, how do you just sit with the physical sensation when you've just experienced a catastrophic loss or a devastating trauma?
That is the ultimate test of the process. And to understand how to handle it, we need to briefly look at that map of consciousness we mentioned. Human emotion is mapped on a logarithmic scale.
Meaning the jump from one level to the next isn't just one step up a staircase, right? It's an exponential leap in energy.
Precisely. The power multiplies massively as you go up. At the very bottom, close to death, you have these highly destructive, low-energy states: shame, guilt, apathy, grief, fear.
The really heavy, dark clouds.
Yeah. But as you move up the scale, you hit a critical turning point at the level of courage. Courage is where you shift from negative, life-draining energy to positive, life-supporting energy.
Oh, so that's the pivot?
It is. It's where you finally say, I can handle this. And above courage, the energy just expands exponentially into states like acceptance, love, and ultimately peace.
Okay, so in a massive life crisis, say a divorce, a sudden death, financial ruin, we are instantly plunged down to the very bottom of that map. We are drowning in grief, or fear, or apathy.
Exactly. And the problem with a major life crisis is the sheer volume of that negative emotion.
Right,
It is
then.
overwhelmingly dense.
It's just too much.
Every day letting go asks you to sit with the feeling without trying to escape it. But in a severe crisis, the trauma taps into a massive, lifelong reservoir of repressed pain. If you try to just sit there and face a tidal wave of grief head-on without any preparation, it will literally crush your nervous system.
Wait, I actually want to push back on this right here. Because the sources say that Hawkins actually recommends that in a severe crisis, you should consciously use escapes.
He does, yeah.
But doesn't that violate the absolute golden rule of letting go? I mean, isn't binge watching TV or going to the movies or venting to a friend exactly what we are supposed to avoid if we want spiritual freedom?
I know it sounds like a total contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely backwards.
But it's a vital paradox to understand. In acute trauma, the immediate goal isn't enlightenment. The goal is survival.
Oh, rifle. Okay.
You are entirely permitted, even encouraged, to suppress, to vent, or to escape. You can go play with a dog, go to the movies, talk to a friend, dive into a video game. But the crucial distinction here is the word consciously.
Meaning you aren't just blindly reacting and letting the escape control you, you are choosing it.
Exactly. You are tactically deploying an escape to act as a pressure valve.
Yeah.
You are acknowledging, look, I am completely overwhelmed by fear right now, and I am choosing to watch this movie to distance myself from it.
Ah, so it's a deliberate strategy.
Yes. You are doing it with the explicit intention of reducing the sheer unmanageable quantity of the emotion to a level you can actually handle. You are bleeding off just enough steam so the boiler doesn't explode.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. And once that absolute peak intensity is reduced slightly, then you have set the stage for the real work of surrender.
Okay, so we've survived the initial blast. We watched the movie, we distracted ourselves consciously. The pressure is down from a 10 to like an 8.
Yeah, it's slightly more manageable.
So how do we actually begin to process the disaster without getting sucked right back into the overwhelm?
You start incredibly small. This specific crisis strategy is called surrendering the trivia. When a massive crisis hits, you do not look at the giant, terrifying center of the storm. You look at the outer edges.
There's a really powerful case study about this in the sources, right? About a man who lost his long-term job. He was like completely paralyzed.
Yes, he was deep in apathy and despair. He couldn't even bring himself to look for work. But instead of trying to process the massive existential dread of being unemployed and losing his whole identity, he started by looking at the tiny details of his old routine.
Okay, what kind of details?
Well, he focused on letting go of wanting to park his car in his usual parking space.
Which seems completely absurd in the face of financial ruin.
It does sound crazy. But look at the mechanism. He couldn't handle the big grief, but he could feel the subtle annoyance of losing that parking spot. He noticed that tiny frustration in his body, sat with it, and let it pass.
Wow. Just the parking space.
Yeah, and after he surrendered the parking space, he moved on to letting go of wanting to eat at his usual lunch spot with his colleagues. Then he surrendered his attachment to his physical desk. Then his attachment to seeing the same secretary every morning.
But why does surrendering something as silly as a parking space actually help you process losing your entire career?
Because it shifts the momentum. It gets the mind into letting go mode. By successfully surrendering a small, manageable attachment, you prove to yourself that you have agency.
Oh, I see.
You are pulling yourself up out of apathy and into that turning point level of courage we talked about. You acknowledge a feeling, you release it, and your energy expands. And as you surrender the periphery, the trivial details, a curious thing happens.
What's that?
The main event becomes significantly less oppressive. The core trauma literally starts to shrink.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. It's like trying to defuse a massive, highly complex bomb.
Yes, exactly.
You don't just walk up and smash the main explosive with a hammer because it'll detonate and destroy everything. You have to carefully snip the tiny, seemingly insignificant wires first. The red wire on the outside, the blue wire on the side.
That is a perfect way to visualize it.
And once those small peripheral wires are cut, the main bomb actually loses its power to explode.
It really does. And that leads right into the next phase of handling a crisis, which is disassembling the emotional complex. We tend to label a crisis with one terrifying word, like job loss, or divorce, or illness,
Right.
and we think it's one giant monolithic emotion. But a crisis is never just one emotion, it's a composite.
Right, it's a whole cocktail of awful feelings mashed together.
Exactly. In the case of the man who lost his job, his overwhelming dread was actually a combination of despair, plus anger in the form of injured pride, plus terror about his financial future.
So 3 separate things.
At least. Once you break the bomb down into its component parts, you realize you weren't fighting one giant monster. You were dealing with several smaller ones.
So you tackle them one by one.
Yes. You can isolate just the fear of the future, feel that physical knot in your stomach, and surrender it. Then you look at the injured pride, sit with the heat of that anger, and surrender that. You disassemble the complex so it can't crush you.
Man, okay, so we've used our conscious escapes to survive the initial shock. We've snipped the small wires by surrendering the trivia. We've disassembled the giant bomb into smaller, manageable pieces of emotion. We've survived.
Right, you're out of the woods mostly.
But to truly heal, to reach that profound spiritual endpoint we discussed at the start of the deep dive, we can't just walk away from the wreckage once we feel a little better, can we?
No, absolutely
Yeah.
not. Because if you stop there, you're really just managing symptoms.
Mm.
If you want total spiritual freedom, you have to do 2 more things. First, you have to go back for the remnants.
The remnants.
Remember those parts of the emotion you purposely escaped or suppressed at the very beginning to survive?
Oh, right, when you were watching movies and distracting yourself?
Exactly. Over the coming weeks, months, or even years, fragments of those intense feelings will pop back up to the surface. You must surrender them as they arise, piece by piece.
Because if you don't, they just sit in your physical system and rot.
They really do. They turn into chronic bitterness, unconscious guilt, or straight-up physiological issues. Think about the mind-body connection here. Eastern medicine talks about acupuncture meridians, pathways of energy running through the body.
Sure, yeah.
Whether you view that literally or metaphorically, the principle holds. Chronically holding on to negative emotions creates severe blockages in your physical body. Unprocessed grief or rage literally manifests as physical tension, elevated cortisol, and eventually disease.
Wow, so it's a health imperative too.
Absolutely. So you must clean up the remnants to protect your physical form.
Yeah.
But the ultimate step, the step that actually transforms a tragedy into a spiritual awakening, is recontextualizing the event.
Recontextualizing, meaning changing the fundamental meaning of what happened to you.
Yes, you have to actively look back at the wreckage and acknowledge the hidden gift or the lesson within the painful experience.
Mm.
Consider the work of the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, which the source mentions.
Oh, man's search for meaning, right?
Exactly. He survived the horrific circumstances of the Nazi concentration camps, losing everything and everyone he loved. Yet, amidst the most profound suffering imaginable, he realized that while every physical thing can be taken from a human being, the last human freedom is the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances.
That is just incredible.
It is. He recontextualized his unimaginable suffering to hold profound meaning. He didn't just survive the camps. He used the experience to discover the unbreakable core of the human spirit.
This completely aligns with what Carl Jung talked about, regarding the shadow and the unconscious. Jung believed that the unconscious mind has this inborn drive toward wholeness and realization of the self.
Yes, exactly.
And sometimes the unconscious will actually devise ways to bring that about, even if those ways are deeply traumatic to our conscious mind.
That's a brilliant connection. A crisis often forces us to face our shadow, the parts of ourselves we're absolutely terrified to look at. The vanity, the greed, the crippling insecurity. It strips away our comforting illusions and forces us to grow.
Which brings us back to how much our small self, our ego, deeply hates this healing process.
Oh, it despises it.
The ego would much rather hold on to a bitter grudge for decades than look for a hidden gift. Think about that story from the book of the two brothers who held a grudge for 23 years.
That story is wild.
They didn't speak, they missed out on each other's lives, their kids growing up, all of it. Over 2 decades of total silence.
It's a tragic, yet incredibly common illustration of the small self at work.
Right. And when one of the brothers finally started using this letting go technique, he sat with the resentment, he stopped feeding the thousands of thoughts justifying why he was mad, and he just felt the physical anger.
He dropped the narrative.
Exactly. And as he surrendered it, the anger melted into intense grief. He broke down in tears, realizing how much love and family connection had just been lost. They finally reunited.
Which is beautiful.
It is. But when they did, one of them suddenly remembered what the original monumental argument was actually about. It was over a pair of tennis shoes.
A 23-year separation, a lifetime of lost connection, over tennis shoes. It's unbelievable.
It perfectly illustrates how our small self loves to cling to these cheap, petty payoffs. The ego gets a weird satisfaction out of being the victim or being right, even if the price of being right is 23 years of lost love.
And that is exactly why surrendering in a crisis is the ultimate spiritual crucible. If you can let go of the deep, agonizing pain of a major crisis, you completely empty your emotional pressure cooker.
Because it forces it all out.
Right, because a crisis forces so much deeply repressed stuff to the surface all at once. Handling it this way leaves you with a dramatically emptier reservoir of negativity. The ultimate spiritual payoff is a permanent reduction in your fear of life.
Because you realize you can survive anything. If you can handle the terrible feelings inside you, the outside world just loses its power to terrify you.
That's exactly it. This mirrors the experiences of people who have near-death experiences.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, people who face the ultimate terror, the profound shock of imminent death, and surrender to it, often come back with a profound sense of serenity. They have a total immunity from fear and deep spiritual illumination. When you successfully surrender through a life crisis, you lose the dread of the future. You become spiritually bulletproof because you know your inner sun can never be extinguished.
Man. So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now? You might not be facing a Category 5 hurricane today. You might just be dealing with a daily grind. But the everyday practice is what builds the spiritual muscle for when the storm hits.
That's the real takeaway. Practice now.
Right. Think about the guy who lost his passport right before a major life-changing trip. He was panicking, frantically tearing his house apart, his mind racing with 1,000 catastrophic thoughts about ruined plans and wasted money.
Right, the fish aggressively biting the bait.
Exactly. The thoughts were completely running the show. Finally, he sat down, stopped looking, and used the technique. He moved his attention from the frantic thoughts in his head down into his body. He asked himself what feeling he was actually ignoring.
And what did he find?
Well, as he sat with the physical sensation, he realized it wasn't just stress about a piece of paper. Underneath was a deep grief and fear of losing a relationship with the person he was traveling to see.
Ah, there's the core.
He sat with that fear. He felt the tightness in his chest. He let it run its course without judgment. And the moment the energy dissipated, the moment he felt at peace with the possibility of the trip not happening, the frantic thoughts vanished.
The smoke cleared.
Instantly. He instantly remembered where the passport was. It was sitting in an incredibly obvious place.
Because by letting go of the underlying emotional block, the mind quieted down and natural clarity just emerged effortlessly. The ego's smokescreen blew away.
And that is the bridge. If you can learn to let go of the missing passport today, if you can learn to sit with the physical sensation of annoyance when you get cut off in traffic instead of feeding the angry thoughts, you are building the exact same spiritual muscle you will use to survive the darkest nights of the soul tomorrow.
Whether it's a parking space or a profound personal tragedy, the mechanism remains identical. It really is a pathway to absolute inner freedom.
So, to bring this all together for you, letting go is not a temporary band-aid to make you feel a little better on a bad day. It is a profound process of spiritual unlearning. When the house is on fire, you don't reach for the baking soda.
No, you don't.
You use conscious escapes tactically to survive the initial blast. You systematically cut the small wires of trivial attachments to diffuse the overwhelm. You go back for the remnants so they don't manifest as physical disease. And finally, you recontextualize the trauma to find the hidden gift.
Beautifully said.
By doing this, you dissolve that petty, ego-driven small self and you wash the mud off the window, allowing your innate inner peace to finally shine through.
You step out of the illusion of fear and into the reality of who you truly are.
And as we wrap up this deep dive today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought that we haven't even touched on yet. This isn't just a philosophical or emotional theory. There is physical, biological proof of this spiritual reality.
Whoa, this is the kinesiology part.
Yes. Dr. Hawkins noted that you can literally test the truth of this on your own body using kinesiology, also known as muscle testing. Here's how it works. The body's physical strength is intimately connected to the energy of your thoughts and emotions.
It's fascinating.
If you hold a mean, petty, or resentful thought in your mind, if you cling to the drama of that small self and someone presses down on your extended arm, your physical muscles will instantly test weak. Your entire nervous system loses power.
Right, you literally go weak.
But if you shift your mind and hold a forgiving, generous, loving thought, your muscles surge with bioenergy. Your arm stays locked and strong against the exact same pressure.
It proves the energy shift is real.
So the next time you find yourself clinging to anger or resentment or terror during a crisis, ask yourself, why is my physical body instantly rejecting this feeling? What is my own biology trying to tell me about who I really am? Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the pathway of surrender. Keep washing those windows, keep snipping those small wires, and keep exploring. We'll catch you next time.